First of all, Dr. Lorimer, let me thank you for allowing me to be here. It's quite an honor for a boy from Farmington, West Virginia, the coal mountain, coal hills, coal companies, to be here at Yale. And I can only say it's an honor and a pleasure. Bill, thank you so much for the amount of time you spend in our state and working with our people. I know Sonia appreciates and enjoys working with you. Sonia Chambers is the head of our Healthcare Cost Review Authority, and it's good to have Sonia here. I know she's here. Where? Right there in the back. And then Joan Ohl, a dear friend of ours who used to head up our DHHR in our state and done a wonderful job and has been a dear friend. Joan, I know Joan. I saw Joan earlier right there. I want to thank, and Daniel, thank you for putting this on, and the staff and all the work that goes behind, and your two beautiful daughters and your wife, and they get involved. I like to see that. I come from a family business, so everybody had to work. So I understand that also. To Doug Ray and the Microsofts and to the education and business leaders around the country, for you all being part of this is really something special. Someone once said, life's challenges are not supposed to paralyze you. They're supposed to help you discover who you are. All of us are a product of our environment. You heard a little bit about mine. Linda knew more about me than I had remembered. First of all, this whole athletic thing. I was a four-sport letterman in high school because I came from a school with 78 people in my senior class. If you could walk, talk, and chew gum, by God, you could play. So they started. I enjoyed all the sports and tried everything. And what was funny is I'll never forget. I was a junior in high school, and the baseball coach says, "We're going to start a track team." And I said, "Well, that sounds pretty good. I can do that." And to show you how sophisticated we were, I ran track in baseball shoes because we didn't have track shoes. So we were multitasking back then. And I look back, I came from, a little bit about me might tell about my thought process and how I think government. I try to find basically there's something that connects. And I find that common denominator. And I do that. I try to. And Sonia will tell you, sometimes it gets a little bit, they think, this guy's completely lost his mind. Because I got here because of politics, and once I got here, I try to take politics out of the process. I know if I let her do her job and can protect her from all the politicians coming at her, making decisions that truly aren't for the best interest, if I can give that protection, trust me, we've got good people, and all of you know, and you are good people. You can do the right thing. But if you got the political pressure coming at you, no one's protecting you, and you're just cannon fodder, pretty soon you're going to succumb to that and say, well, that's the way it is. It's the way it's always been. I tell people, I come from a little town of 500 people. It's a little coal mining town. If you look back in history, in 1968, we had a mine explosion that killed 68 of our men. My uncle and I had 5 classmates in high school, 1968. People, I graduated in 65, so it tells you my age. But in 68, these at that time, very, very bright, intelligent young men, they can make more going into the mine than most professors were making teaching college at that time. So you assume the path they took was economics. We lost them and lost my uncle, so it was very near and dear to me. And if you watched us go through the Sago mine disasters in 2006 and all the different things, we brought change about, and I'll speak about that because we took advantage of the situation. It's been said a crisis is a horrible thing to waste. In the political arena, it is. You don't ever waste a crisis. You take advantage, and you better hit while the iron's hot. If you don't, you won't bring change about. But I came from that town. I watched people, and first of all, healthcare. I had Dr. Jenkins, and I had Mildred Cutlip, affectionately known as Millie, our nurse. Company doctor, company nurse. Okay, that was our healthcare delivery system in Farmington, West Virginia. It was as much, or probably maybe more than what we thought we needed. We had everything. If you had a problem, go see Doc. If not, you better hope Doc was busy because he's a little bit rougher than Millie. Millie take better care of you. Her shots didn't hurt. And she'd sew you up. She could sew you up better than Doc could. But when I look at that, I saw the delivery firsthand in a rural community where someone had to really take care of some. I never knew if they ever charged me. I don't know. Maybe my parents paid a couple dollars for something. But we would go anytime we didn't feel just quite right and better go see Doc. So that was the delivery in rural West Virginia back in the 50s. And I look back on that. My grandfather ran a grocery store. The mines would be cyclical, if you would. They'd be off and on, and then when new innovations or when the downturn in the economy, people would be laid off. 1959, never forget it. Came back from high school. High school's on top of the hill. Everybody walked to school. There were very few people were bussed in for anything. So we walked up to school, and I was walking down, and every man that worked in the mine was sitting on the curb. They just got all laid off. What happened is the continuous miners just came in. So the continuous miners really replaced the day labor, if you will. And that whole transition was taking place. And I lost my Boy Scout leader, Pat Keener. I was very attached to him because he was teaching us things. My parents worked all the time, and he was teaching. So, my life changed at 12 years of age, 1959. Never forget that. And so I started, and my grandfather had a little grocery store. Papa was self-educated, tough, little Italian immigrant, about 5'6", weighed about 230 pounds. He could lift a side of beef, and he could butcher, and he did everything. But we all had to work. So there was a work ethic, and Papa had one saying, no work, no eat. Any of you remember that? No work, no eat. Papa expected everybody to work. Papa gave credit. He was the bank also. There was no bank in town, so Papa used to be the banker. He'd give credit to everybody, and everybody called him Papa. No matter who you were, what nationality you were, what race you were, Papa, I need $5. Okay. He wouldn't let anybody go hungry. Never kept many records at all, but everybody paid him back. I'll never forget in '59, the crisis hit, and we couldn't get credit. Papa couldn't get credit. I didn't understand that, and he explained it, but I kept noticing we weren't getting any deliveries to stock the shelves. And Papa kept giving food away. And the bankers come to see Papa, and they said, hey, Pop, you can't keep giving this away. You understand? He says, you're not able to, they're not paying you, and you're not going to be able to pay. He says, listen, go look at them. He says, they're hungry. They're hungry. I've got food. I'm going to give it to them. When I don't have no more food, they'll understand. But when I have food, they can't understand why they can't have it too. And he kept, and we got down to like just a few cans on the shelf of product. And the mines went back to work, and everybody paid him 100% on the dollar. It's unbelievable. So I've watched. So to tell you who I am, you have to know where I came from. Now, the other thing is, being a product of our environment, which we all are, you can reach back to your same experiences. But I watched people who cared about each other and took care of each other. Someone says, oh, I bet because now that my position of being governor, they think, well, you probably came from a real high-end area. And I say that I was born a child of privilege. And they look at me, and I said, I was a privileged child. And you would think, well, I must have been big neighborhood, fancy neighborhood. I lived down across the tracks by Buffalo Creek. So I had the tracks on one side and the creek on the other. Well, I must have had a big house. I lived in a 4-room garage apartment, grew up in. I learned about the bees and the trees, if you will. Every time my mother got pregnant, we got a new bunk bed. I could tell something was going on when that bunk bed moved in. I knew something happened. That was my entree into the facts of life, if you will. But anyway, they said, well, you must have had a silver spoon in your mouth, a lot of money. I don't think there was a silver spoon in the town I lived in, let alone in somebody's mouth. Well, why would I think I was a child of privilege? I had people who cared about me, unconditional love as a child. They wanted me to do well. They didn't want me to screw up. And if I did, they knew I would make mistakes, and they would help me. I had that unconditional support and love. When you have that, that's pretty privileged. You're a privileged person. And most of us can reach back to that. Someone really loved you unconditional. That goes into the 5 promises Linda talked about. And that's what I really gauge our whole administration on. If we're doing that, we're going to be fine. So, with all that being said, I said, well, what's happened today? How have we gotten where we are? We all become creatures of comfort. Someone can show you the roadmap to success. We can put it on this board and say, now listen, if you do this, this, and this, your life's going to change immediately for the better. You're going to look at all that and you're going to shake your head. And I said, all you got to do, you got a red button and a green button in front of you. Push the green button that you want to change your life. Human nature is I won't get a simple majority in the room to do that because pretty much you're comfortable. You know what yesterday was, pretty much how today's going, and pretty much an idea of what tomorrow will be. It's pretty hard. Now, you can imagine if you get a bunch of legislators and we're all trying to say, okay, we got to do this, this, and this. They're thinking, let me think, if I do that, Will I get reelected with this? What group will I lose? What support base? So change is very hard. So how do you bring change about? You got to find common denominators. You've got to find something that everybody can connect with. I'll give you a perfect example. In my state, and I know that Joan and Sonia can, we had workers' comp. It was a very onerous situation. And I'll never forget, I heard a very, very accomplished legislator tell me, he said, Joe, you'll never make change. They will never change workers' comp. We were a state-run system, one of 5 in the nation, very costly. And they said, the reason you won't, there's no constituent base. The doctors like the way it is. They get paid well. The doctors like this workers' comp. The trial lawyers, they really like it. And the workers like it because they get taken pretty good care of. The only people who don't like it is the people who are paying the business because we're adjusting their premiums continuously to make the differences. When I took office in 2005, we had a $4 billion unfunded liability. $4 billion and growing. It was when I got in office, I flashed back to Farmington, West Virginia, what my grandfather told me. He said, Joe, if you're inclined and your nature is to want to help people, keep yourself strong. Now, I learned over the years, Papa just didn't mean physically strong. He meant financially strong. He couldn't have helped all those people in 1959 if he wasn't a little bit financially strong to do that. And he wasn't worried because he believed in the human spirit enough that they would pay back. But he was strong enough to help. And when I was a little kid, he says, oh, Charlie's a nice guy, isn't he, Joe? And I said, oh, Papa, everybody loves Charlie. He said, Charlie give you the shirt off his back, wouldn't he? And I said, boy, he sure would. His only problem is Charlie don't have a shirt. He didn't plan well enough or make himself strong enough to have an extra shirt to give you. And that stuck with me. So I become governor. Now, contrary to what you might believe, they don't give us an instruction book. I know some of you think they should. And you're probably right, they probably should. But they don't. So we got to figure this thing out. You got to figure it out. First of all, they said, what should you ask a person who is seeking office? Ask them why they want it. If they can't give you an answer that quick, you better find another candidate. If they can't tell you why they want to be governor or why they want to be a senator or why they want to be some office that they're seeking, if there's not a driven reason and a purpose for them to ask you for your vote, the most precious and valuable thing you have, find another candidate. Because basically public service will go out the window and self-service will take over. And that's really what it's... I've always said this. A West Virginian can shake your hand and look in your eyes and see your soul. They've had hard times all their lives. They've worked hard. And you can't BS them. You really can't. They can tell real quick if it's for you or for them. And you better get it right the first time. They won't give you a second chance. So with all that being said, I said, okay, Papa, be strong. I said, we have to get our financial house in order. I get elected and take off and go to New York, and I go to Wall Street. Here I am, little boy from Farmington, and I'm going to Wall Street. And I says, okay, Fitch's, Standard & Poor's, and Moody's, tell me about my state. Tell me what I need to know about my state. Because I always knew as a business person, my banker, if I didn't have lines of credit, it could shut me off, shut me down. So I wanted to make sure that the state was able to have financial wherewithals to do the things I thought we needed to do. And they went down a list. And they won't give you recommendations. They'll give you an observation. And they gave me observations. Every one of them said, workers' comp is your Achilles heel. People don't want to invest in your state, and people there would leave if they could because it's so onerous. Fine. Diversification. You're not diversified enough, basically, in your economy. You're basically an extraction state that's heavy industry. And I said, fine, I understand that. Educational attainment. That went through me. They said, you don't have enough people with high enough education attainment. And I'm thinking, you know what? That's fine. If you're judging me on today, you're right. I probably don't have enough people, percentage-wise, that have a piece of parchment hanging on the wall that show that they attained 4 years of an undergraduate degree or more. But I said, listen, what you're not giving me credit for, I probably got more people in my state that can add value to a product than any other state, because we had to. I got people when they were 17 and 18 or even 16 could leave school and they'd go to work in a factory or in a mine. They did something. When they were there, they learned skills. They become electricians, master mechanics, master machinists. These people could add value. You've got to give us some credit for that. Now, with that, we know we have to transform. But please, don't write me off because you think my people aren't smart enough. They're smarter than what you ever would give them credit for, and they can do anything. So we went through all that, and I went home. I said, we're going to change workers' comp. I knew I had to hit while the iron was hot. I won with a pretty good percentage. And with that, I had to use that capital, that political capital. So we went into a special session 1 week after I took a sworn inauguration and took an oath. And I says, we're going to change this in 5 days. They looked at me, you got to be completely insane. I says, we don't have a choice. It's not whether you want to do it or not, you have to do it. How'd you find a common denominator? I says, well, I called all labor and I called all the businesses together. And I asked them, I said, we have to make these changes. Well, we don't want to do this. I said, well, tell me, what's the purpose of workers' comp? It's basically an insurance policy, a no-fault insurance policy. If I work for you and I get hurt, I should be able to maintain my life until I get better and not miss a paycheck. I said, okay, if that's the purpose of workers' comp, let's look and see how well it's working in West Virginia. From the labor standpoint, if I'm the laborer, the quickest I can get my check in West Virginia is 62 days. 62 days, I have missed 2 house payments, 2 car payments. I'm living hand to mouth. I'm in ruins, financial ruins. So you haven't helped me. You haven't done anything to help me there. And I said, it's just not working. Once we got everybody on the same page, we were able to move it. In 5.5 days, we passed landmark legislation. And our economy just skyrocketed. People started investing. People happened. And I've always said this. If you want to share the wealth, you've got to create wealth. If you want to create wealth, you have to attract investments. It's the only way you can do it. No matter what they say, this is pretty simple. You've got to attract investments to create wealth if you intend to share it. Well, we had to get more investments. We had to diversify, and we started. And we really went gangbusters at it. All the things that we were able to do, it's because that we were paying down debt. Now, that's not a very sexy thing to pay down debt. Can you imagine, as a legislator, saying, guess what? Vote for me. I paid down your debt. What happened to my bridge? Well, I paid your debt off, okay? It just goes on and on. The biggest problem that I see in government today, and we governors are probably as much at fault, if not more, we run on platforms for you to support us. We get supported, and then we go back in, and the legislature basically, out of courtesy, always allows a new governor to have a program or two. Because, well, you got elected, you got a mandate, boom, you do it. Now, you start adding up the amount of governors that I'm the 34th governor. If 33 had done that previously, you know how big government is right now and how many programs we have that maybe has not worked or is not working or have lived their useful life. I went back to basics. I told all of our secretaries, look at the Constitution and tell me what you're mandated. I asked all of my secretaries, and tell me why you have your job. Tell me what you're supposed to do, and tell me if you think you're accomplished. I had a lot of people couldn't even tell me. Had no idea. And if you would ask in government today, there'll be a lot of people who really don't know. So I said, well, tell me what we have that the Constitution says that mandates that we must do. Tell me what we've codified, and tell me what programs that we've elected to do. Because I can tell you the elected programs will go first. You know, we're going to get back to basics and do what we've got to do. And that's how we start doing it. We start looking, how do we deliver health care? Well, first of all, I had to get our economy in order, so we start cutting taxes. And people said, well, how are you cutting taxes? Well, your economy's growing. You can afford to do other things unless you start expanding programs that eats up all the proposed income. We didn't do that. I vowed as governor I wouldn't start one new program. If I started a program, I had to eliminate a program. I'd replace it if it didn't work, but I wouldn't start one, just for the sake of putting my name on it. That was probably the best thing we had done. And with that, we started paying down debt. We had $5 billion. I looked at the state government as this. I want to know what, I brought all the financial people. Tell me where I stand financially. They laid it out. And they said, Governor, here's what you've got. When the day is said and done, at the end of the day, you've got $10 billion. In a little state, my budget's only $4 billion. $4 billion general revenue. Here's what you have to figure. Whatever your general revenue is in your state, triple that, and that's about what it takes to run your state. So my general budget is $4 billion. My special revenue account is about $4 billion. And what passes through the federal is about $4 billion. So it's about $11 to $12 billion it takes to run our little state of 2 million people. So if you have a budget of 20, billion, you're about a $60 billion cash flow is what it takes to run your state. That's kind of a rule of thumb, a little bit less than that, but basically that's not that far off. And that's, so what we looked at, I said, fine, general revenue is this, special revenue is this. Well, let me make sure, first of all, are we collecting all the money we're supposed to? Are we really doing our job as efficiently as our tax department? So I had to upgrade all my IT. That's what we got into. Upgraded all of our IT in our tax and revenue. I said, before I can ask you to pay more, I better collect what you already owe me or what somebody else has not paid. So we start doing the same things you do every day, and we should be doing some pretty common sense and pretty rudimentary, if you will. So we start going through all of that. And then we start looking, okay, if I don't have a population that's healthy and educated, then I can't grow. I have said in West Virginia, we've hit the proverbial wall. And that wall is basically, we've done so many things as far as in transforming government, running efficiently and effectively. I call it retail government. For all of you in government right now, probably if you're a supervisor or if you are the supervisor, do you all talk about who's the customer and how well you're serving the customer? It doesn't happen. We've never identified. We basically know we have a job to do and we're performing that job and that's it. And I keep saying retail government, basically you live and die by the satisfaction of the customer. And I said, put yourself, you go out and buy, you shop every day, you buy something. You know, if you treat it, there's an old retail saying, the sweetness of low price is long forgotten after the bitterness of poor quality lingers on. Now think about it. The sweetness of low price. How many of us have gone and got a deal? And we got that deal, man, we felt so good. How many of us bought that product home and it wasn't what we thought it would be? And then we tried to call and get it fixed and repaired and we didn't get the service. So the sweetness of low price is long forgotten after the bitterness, and how bitter is it, of poor quality lingers on. When you have that experience, you cannot wait to tell everybody you know where not to go buy something. You don't tell them that you saved $200. Oh, no, you won't reveal that. But you'll tell them, that's horrible. The product wasn't any good and the service was horrible. Don't go there. Now, think about reverse. How about if you have a great experience? You got a good value, you got a great product, and they just couldn't do enough for you. You can't wait to share the good news. Doesn't happen that often. So I said, I got to find my niche. As a little state, what's my niche? My first governor's conference, I go, and there's myself. I got governor of Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Virginia, and Maryland. These are all much bigger states than me. And I looked around and sized up my competition. And these are all my friends. I said, listen, I says, I'm the little guy on the block, and you've got a lot more money. I can't compete if you want to give more money to attract more businesses. But I want you to know one thing. If you snooze, you'll lose with me. I'll get you. If you sleep, you take a day off, I'm going to get you. If you don't work on Saturday or Sunday, I'm going to get you. Because I knew I had to outwork everybody. And I get people every day come to my state, and they say, well, Governor, how about this and this and that? We go through the ceremonial dance of how much tax credits, how much incentives, how much upfront money. And I said, now listen. I can't compete with Ohio or New York or California. I can't. They can give you more money. I said, but if that's what you were looking for, you wouldn't be here. You're looking for a place that really wants you to succeed as much as you want to succeed. You're looking for a place that understands a marketable return on investment. You're looking for a place that is committed to giving you a workforce. And the bottom line is, every one of them to a T, that says, can you guarantee me you'll have the workforce that I can sustain my business and my growth? That's what it's all about. It's the personal capital they're looking for. So we as a state have to make sure of that. Well, I can't do it unless they're healthy. So then I start looking at my health. How is delivering health in the state of West Virginia? Much better way to do it than what we've been doing it. I wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel. I said reinvent the wheel. I've just tried to balance the wheel, make the car run a little smoother. That's all. I took everything we've been doing, took the things that's worked and expanded upon that, took the things that hasn't worked and tried to get rid of it. That's all. We have the health clinics. We've got the free clinics, health rights. I said, okay, they're already delivering the people. People are already coming there. They already have a database. Why not work with them? We have WVRX, one of the first states that basically reached out, WVRX. And what we've done with that, people can't afford prescriptions. If you're below 200% of the poverty level and you have no insurance policy that has any, you qualify to be involved on a sliding fee scale, fee basis. We in government think that there's this magic threshold, and anybody above this here pays everything, anybody below this pays nothing. It's killing us. We don't have a sliding fee scale, need basis. Insurance, really nursing homes is they're getting first dollar out. And bottom line is, you can't tell me that 80% in my state are on poverty. But by God, you go look at the database in the nursing homes in all of our states, and about 80% of the people are on Medicaid. That's ridiculous because the system doesn't allow for a sliding fee scale. You get me started on health care. Let me just tell you, here's how I evaluate health care. I look at it this way. If you're old enough, you've got it. If you're poor enough, you've got it. If you're a criminal, you've got it. If you're a kid, you've got it. Well, old, poor, children, criminals. Who doesn't have it? Working people. Only one segment of society is not protected. It's working people. It's the people on the front line every day trying to make a living, we're asking to do all the heavy lifting. Everybody else has got something. Now they're going to reform. I said, and then I got people say, "Oh, I don't like the public option. I don't want government." And I said, "Where in the hell have you been for the last 50 years? If you don't want government involved in health care." Oh yeah, we've had that discussion many times. I'm thinking, my God, where have they lived? Anyway, with that being said, we are involved. In a little state, we're more involved than maybe in some other states, but we are involved, all to a big degree. The bottom line is, how do we get the best bang for our buck? Well, first of all, you remember the big to-do about chips? They were going to eliminate chips, right? Children's Health Insurance Program. Now, let me ask you, how many of you in this room believe that Congress would ever eliminate CHIPS, Children's Health Insurance Program? Not going to happen. I knew that. Mike Leavitt was Secretary of DHHS. So Mike's an old governor from Utah, and I knew Mike, so I go up to, I says, "Mike, listen, you are arguing over $15 billion, $60 billion. That's way above my pay grade. I know one thing, you're not going to eliminate it. I want a waiver because I have an unhealthy population. For whatever reasons, we're a very unhealthy population. You can say, well, the terrain is difficult, the heritage, who we are, the people, the culture, whatever it might be. But we are. I can't reach, they can't say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I can't reach all the old dogs. I know where the pups are. Pups are in school. And most of my kids, most of our children that aren't on Medicaid fall in to the CHIPS. They qualify. We're at the 250% level of federal poverty level. So most of them fall in household incomes, so I can take care of all the children. The problem is, I said, hey, Mike, a child who's in a household that doesn't have health care, guess what? They don't go for routine checkups. They only get the health care delivery when they're critically ill or something happens because their parents don't have it. They don't think of any type of preventive maintenance at all. It's just not there. Why don't you allow me to use my CHIPS money to screen every child coming into kindergarten and let me branch out K, 2, 5, and 8? I'll give you a healthy population, and maybe I can change mom and dad, grandpa, grandma, aunt, and uncle. Because the kids will say, that's bad for you. You shouldn't eat that. We got to do something exercise. We're supposed to do that. And I've got to get my weight down. You follow me? We're trying to change, but I'm changing from the school. I know where they are. I've got a captive audience. Guess what? We're the only state in the nation that asked for it, and we got it. We got a waiver. Then I looked at Medicaid. I would say that probably the people that were voting on health care in Washington does not realize that most states don't cover all the people that qualify under the poverty level. That's a pretty broad statement. Maybe it might be a little harsh. I don't mean for it to be. I don't think that they realize, if they haven't been on the front line, and give you an example. In my state, I don't cover anybody, any single person that falls under the poverty guidelines. Not one do I cover. Can't afford it. If you look at the whole average as a whole, I cover less than 40% of all the people that qualify. Of all the people that qualify because of their income levels that I could give a Medicaid card to, we only cover less than 40%. So when they start talking about 133, 150, and this and that, you can imagine what a stretch that's going to be. And I started thinking of this, okay? They started this Medicaid program back in 65, and they wanted us to take care of people, and we should. It started for pregnant women, poor, infants, giving a child. So it was a pretty carte blanche. It was a pretty good program, all-encompassing. Then they start spreading it out. And what happened is they never mandated that we cover everybody. So now all of a sudden they're jumping and saying, well, this should be done, that should be done. And I said, they don't realize that we don't do it now. So how do we get those people in? I says, why don't you give me a waiver? And as Bill talked about, we kept going back and back because something didn't make sense. I said, you got the program in place. Just let me have a little flexibility and see if I can make it work better. That's the old theory. Let me balance the wheel. I won't reinvent it. You've already invented it. Let me balance it and see if I can make it work. So I took that process and I said, okay, give me a Medicaid redesign. I've got healthy poor people. You should not make me take care of a healthy poor person the way that I have a moral obligation to take care of an unhealthy poor person. Now, that might not be, the perfect scenario, but the bottom line is I've got people that can take care and help themselves a little bit if I give them some preventive maintenance. So how do I do it? I said, let me give incentives. What do I not do? I don't, pain and suffering for dental, for adults, is about the only way. You got to really be able to prove that you have pain and suffering. Eye care is usually not given for Medicaid. So I said, well, let's give a reward system. If you go and get your checkup, if you join a healthy lifestyle coalition, if you go to a nutrition center, if you do the things and get your physicals, and if you make your doctor's visits and quit abusing the emergency room, if you do all this, you earn certain points. With that, you can buy other services that you don't have now. It's much cheaper. I said, let me try it. Well, we're trying it. We're getting a lot of pushback from Washington. They don't like it real well. They think that one size fits all, and I think they can't afford to pay for all. They're going to have to figure out what works. And that's where we become the laboratories. We make it work, and we can. We can find ways to do it. They're going to have to give us basically state by state a little bit more of autonomy and try to say, okay, what fits your population base? My population base is much different than some of yours, but I need to get them productive. I can't get them productive unless they're healthy. I can't really educate them unless they're healthy. It goes back to the 5 promises. If a child doesn't have unconditional love in their life, they start out behind the 8 ball, proverbial 8 ball. If a child doesn't have a safe place to where harm can't enter, they've got problems. If a child doesn't have a healthy start, someone that can teach them that it's their responsibility, not somebody else's, then you got a problem. If a child doesn't have a marketable skill as they go through education, then you've got a problem. And if you don't do those things right and they don't have someone to mentor or tutor them, that child won't live to be a growing, caring adult and give something back, which is the 5th promise. If you don't do that, then you failed as a society. We have failed as government. We have failed as leaders, political leaders. Those are the things that we're trying to do and trying to change. The Kids First health screening is working, and we are expanding that. We want to make sure that we stay with this child all the way through. We've charted our education attainment, basically 3rd and 8th grade. Statistics will show you that you lose it if a child doesn't have certain skills, reading skills, comprehension skills by 3rd grade. You're setting them up for failure if you pass them. In West Virginia, we passed a bill last year. We will not let that child, no matter who he or she is, what family they come from, that child will not pass to 4th grade unless they have proper reading, attainment, and comprehension skills. In 8th grade, we take that child at 8th grade and we test again. That child might not have any interest in academia, but that child has great potential for skill sets. We're going to try to entice that child through the carrot, if you will, showing them what type of a quality life they can live, what type of a house they can live in, what type of a car they can drive, if they attain these certain levels. And we start doing a dual purpose at that time as far as education. We're going to produce a workforce that can compete in the 21st century. We're committed to that. We believe we can do it, and we believe that we've been able to show a way to make it happen within the confines of what the government has right now. Don't give me more money. Let me use what you're giving me. That's all. I keep saying sooner or later someone's got to get tired of printing money in Washington and sending it to us. They've got to get tired of that. There's not going to be anybody to write that paper for us, I can guarantee you. I don't want to carry the debt of everybody. I said, I can make it. I'm going to be able to make it. Right now, my state's in the best cash position ever in the history of 150 years. I got more cash in the bank I've ever had. I've got more challenges than I've ever had, but I got more cash. I can get through this. And as long as the people stay behind us, we're fine. There's an old adage in government and in politics. You better tell your story before someone tells one on you. Think about it. How many people have sat back and not said anything and just get blasted? Then when they do come out, it's too late because pretty much you've already believed what you've heard because you heard no reply. So I always said, if we have to, good news, bad news, whatever, tell our story first. If we screwed up and made a mistake, as Cicero says, to err is human. People expect you to make mistakes. What they don't expect you to do is cover them up. What they don't expect you to do is blame somebody else for the mistakes you made. They want you to be accountable and responsible. And just to listen, I tried. I thought it would work. I thought it'd be better. It didn't work. We're going to change. Trust me, they'll be behind you 90% of the time. That's all they want, a little honesty and forthright. So on that, we continue to try. We have compare care. Let me tell you in healthcare, if I could do one thing, if I could be and wave the wand one time, what I would ask for, a law in America that says universal billing. Universal billing. Think about this. When's the last procedure? Do any of you ever know what you paid? I have no clue. I got a new knee. That's what football did for me. I got a new knee. I don't know how much it was. I don't know what I got. I don't know if I ever paid for it. I really don't. They send me these big bills, and all I look at is, this is what you owe. That's all I cared about. I said, universal billing. How in the world do you believe healthcare is going to change if you, the greatest consuming nation, the greatest people that ever have consumed anything, aren't able to compare and consume and shop? You have no idea. But they've got us all understanding that, oh, no, you should never ask the doctor or question their opinion. When I got my knee done, I heard this doctor that did my knee was extremely good. I have a son-in-law who has a brother who's a top-notch orthopedic in Chicago, and I want Jimmy to be part of it. And I said, I'm going to test this doctor out. I said, Doc, I only got one question. I have a family member who's a very good orthopedic surgeon. I'd want him to assist you. Now, usually, if you don't trust me, then you ought to go to him. You know, that's the kind of answer you would get most of the time. This doctor says, I'd love to have him. We all have abilities to learn more. I knew I had the right doctor then. I knew I had the right doctor. But with that, I said, universal billing. Anywhere you go in America to get any type of medical services, you should have a complete bill. When I go and buy a suit, they give me the complete bill when I walk out. They don't send me, they say, okay, pay for the pants today. I'll send you maybe the jacket price next month. And I don't know if I'll ever going to send you the price for the shirt and the tie, but somewhere you'll probably pay for it. It doesn't work that way. I said, that's the greatest thing. So you know what I asked I asked for a waiver on, I didn't get this waiver, Bill, I didn't get this one. I says, let me give a reward system to all my Medicaid recipients. Let them shop, and basically for any saving, I'll give them 10% of the savings that they find for overbilling, duplication. You want to talk about putting consumers in the marketplace overnight? The biggest consumer group we have is Medicaid. You think they don't know the system? They learn the system so quick, they rewrite the system. They know, if you want to know what's wrong with the system, go ask somebody that's getting it. They'll tell you where the holes are. They'll tell you where the flaws are. So I said, give them a 10% reward for any savings they find for duplication or services not rendered. I don't know why. To me, that was such, I said, you're not giving me any more money. Just let me reward a Medicaid recipient who finds an abuse. Think about it. You think that wouldn't revolutionize overnight? Once you get people understanding of basically the cost, like anything else, whether it's building this building or something, there's a cost involved. I've had doctors say, oh, this doesn't work, Joe. You don't understand, it doesn't work. I said, well, let me ask you something. We're saying this beautiful hospital. When this hospital was built with a construction management agreement, at the end of the day, did you get a bill for the plumber, for the electrician? Did you get a bill for basically the heat and air conditioning? Did you get a bill for everything? They were able to put it in one, weren't they? It didn't trickle in. You were able to have one total bill if you had a general contractor or management agreement. I said, why can't you do the same for me? Why can't you just say, Joe, fine, this was your medical or lab work, this was your x-ray, and this was your procedure, and this is what you owe. It doesn't make any sense at all that we allow that to go on when we control it. And I said, you want to try a little state? Let me try it. I have Medicaid, PEIA, I'm the biggest provider in my state of health care. Let me try something and show you the appreciable gains. Those are the things that we're trying to do, and it's really out of the box. But the compare care. So what I did, on the internet now you can go and you can look at the hospitals, and Sonia, we've worked on this, and you can see what tonsillectomies are charged at different hospitals. You can see what appendectomies. You can see basically the procedures that are most commonly procedures, what the costs are, and then start shopping. We're trying to get the market forces to work in healthcare. They talked about healthcare, and you wonder why you didn't get public option. You heard nothing about tort reform. You're not going to get one without the other. But never heard a word about tort. We had to do a tort reform in West Virginia because had doctors threatening to leave. Once we did it, we became the most attractive state for doctors to come. At that time, we didn't have anybody writing insurance. We started a co-op, basically, if you will, a mutual. So we already have a public option. And the public option is this. Private sector didn't want to do it. We had to do it. We're doing it now. They're doing it now. There's competition. Didn't hurt anybody. And they talk about the federal option. If this, all you had to do, to me, in my way of looking at it, if he'd have passed, basically, I think there was unanimous agreement that pre-existing conditions should be outlawed. There was unanimous agreement that basically caps should be taken off for catastrophic illnesses if you had insurance. And there was unanimous agreement that you have portability. Those three things were unanimous, Republicans and Democrats, because we tested with the NGA, national governors. We knew that all of our governors, Republicans, Democrats, we could have passed those three. Those three would have given you public option. The reason those three would have given you public option because there would have been the private insurance companies would not have written pre-existing, or they'd start rationing back. The federal would have had to move in, pick up the gap. Then you'd have had a backdoor public option. There's ways to get around all this, and I'm hoping that we're able to achieve that. I believe in health care reform. I believe that every American should have access. But I believe we should spend as much on the front end as we spend on the back end. That's the difference. You let me use the money you're giving me now and give incentives and rewards and use the carrot and stick, if I may. We'll make it go further, and we'll have a healthier populace than what we have right now. But those are the things that we've tried to do. Access to dental care, we know that oral hygiene, how important it is to the health of one's body. We're expanding that. I put more money into that. Health care for our seniors, continuum care, in-home care, put more money than ever in the history of our state into that. I believe very strongly in helping people help themselves, but basically independence. And I went back to Farmington again on that one. I had a grandmother, 85 years of age, living by herself, my mother's mother. And I'd stop and see her, and Grandma was very lethargic and just wasn't. I said, Mom, something's wrong. I said, you got to get Grandma to come do something. She went up and told her mother, she says, Mom, why don't you come down and visit? The kids want to see you. And Grandma, she said, oh, no, honey, I'm okay. She said, okay. Well, I knew it was time. Mom brought her home. She lived to be 100 years old. You know what? She started having social activity, 3 meals a day. She started. I saw with a little bit of intervention, she lived a quality life, and we all enjoyed a quality life having a grandmother for 15 more years. So I went right back to where I came from, and I said, fine. If I can have people go out and take care of people and help them, deliver meals to them, give them some health care, some house cleaning, some hygiene, that's a much better quality of life than putting them in a nursing home. So we as a state done that. We've done it more than anyone's done it. It's the right thing, and I tell you, I believe so strongly in that. Information, I don't need to tell you. President Obama basically has hit this one. We've got to have medical technology information. We've got to share this information. We've got to connect. I'll tell you something, not just in my state, but all states. People that shop pain pills. The Medicaid people have this down to a science. Friday, when most of all normal office hours are closed, they can go to an emergency room. An emergency room basically will give you 6 pain pills. I think, is that the 6th amendment? I think it's 6. 6 or 8 to get you through the weekend. Now, if you can see enough hospitals over the weekend, you can have a pretty good supply. But since we don't have information, real-time information, I don't know that you just was at St. Mary's and now you went over to Cabell, which is 3 miles away. I don't know you did that. So before you know it, I've got a pretty good stash. And before you know it, I've got a pretty good income that I can sell some extra pills that I don't use myself. These are the things that we have no clue how much money we can save. We don't know the economics of this. It's so great. If we don't move as quickly as we can to medical record keeping and basically being able to share real-time information, card swipes, the whole thing, and we're doing everything in our state. We've probably been on the forefront of that bill, I think, and pushing it further. They're saying, well, yeah, but all the private docs and small hospitals, and they won't buy into that. I said, well, wait a minute. You control Medicaid, you control PEIA, you control this and that. All you have to do is give a little bump in reimbursement rates. give a 3, 4, 5% bump, and they'll all buy on. And you think you're not going to save more than 5%? Pay them more if they do, and you're going. It's a no-brainer. These are things that we're trying to do that sometimes it just hits a quagmire within the federal bureaucracy, and they just can't see the light for the forest. So, go help. How many of you think that everybody in your state knows exactly all the health care delivery you have? How many of you think that they ever have one place to put it all together and says, okay, why are we doing this in our prison system? Why do we do this in our school systems? Why are we doing this in public health? Why aren't everybody working on the same page? First of all, they don't know what they're doing. States do not know how much health care they're delivering. And they don't know why there's different policies in different agencies. Have no clue. So we have what we have, Go Help. Go Help we designed Go Help is to gather all the information, to bring it together, to remove the redundancy and duplication. And that basically allows us to have the information we need for the input for our technology and the information we need for the database for technology to make the changes we need. I don't want the prison system to have a different contract with maybe the same supplier that PEIA has. There's no reason for that. And the scales of economy should work for all of us. I could go on and on. I know you're getting tired of this. I want to leave it open for any questions you might have. This is the greatest job. And I can only tell you this. As a governor, you can wake up every day and be so excited about making a difference. And you can go to bed feeling fulfilled at night. When you can find a job like that, try to keep it as long as you can. Give it all you have. And when you look back with no regrets. And that's the way I've approached this. And I reach back to who I am and how I became who I am, where I came from. And I watch people make it when there wasn't. I watch people stand in commodity lines in the 50s. They were so embarrassed because they hit hard times, but they needed the staples of life, that when they would see me or anybody walk by, they would turn their back so we couldn't see their face. I remember all that. And you think I don't reach back the dignity and respect that everyone should have in life and reach back on that and say, we can do it better. You know, they tell me about the vouchers for food for children. I says, why? Why do you want to embarrass a kid that has to come up with and show you that they come from low and reduced and they can't pay? Feed them. And then they said, if you don't, you have to throw the food away at night. First place I go into school is the cooks. I go to the cafeteria. I can learn everything about school by going to the cafeteria. Tells me everything. And when I go to that cafeteria, I said, what do you do with your excess food? Well, we have to throw it away. I do another one. I went to, and I'll share this one last story. I went to school, and I asked him, I said, and this woman was crying. It was May, and she was getting, I said, why are you upset? She was a cook. She says, honey, she says, Governor, she says, these kids aren't going to eat during the summertime. I know that. I said, what's your busiest day? She says, Mondays and Fridays. Monday they come hungry, and Friday they know they're going to be hungry if they don't take all they can or eat all they can. Now, when you see that firsthand, and you live with that, and I said, what do you do with your excess food? She says, well, they tell me I'm supposed to throw it away. She says, but I don't. She says, you know, for some reason, I just kind of put all the excess food up here on the counter, and then we go in the back and work, and for some reason it disappears. She says, I don't know what happens to it, but it disappears. Now here's a lady that had so much compassion and common sense to make those types of. She says, can I ask you something? She says, I don't have any degrees at all. I graduated from high school, and I've been working here for a long time. She says, I know you have nutritionists, and you have all these people with these fancy degrees. Could you tell them just to make a menu up to show what you could buy with food stamps and what type of food you could buy and how to prepare a meal? If you could do that, Governor, and do it on a weekly basis, do you know these kids will take it? You know a lot of them would use it and say, hey, Mom, I had this, and boy, it was really good. Here's how you fix it. Just so much common sense. Doesn't cost anything. Doesn't increase anybody's price. And just that's where we learn. That's how we learn. Only thing I can tell you is Little West Virginia, we're not waiting around. I'm not waiting for someone to be my provider. I don't think that's how this great nation was built. I want someone to be a good partner. That's all. And I tell people in my state, I'm not going to be your provider. I'll be your partner. And we're gonna partner up here and make things work. And as long as you have a little skin in the game, and we all do, you have value. The worst thing in the world is when someone gives it to you, you have no value. You don't care whether you lose it or not. But when you pay a little bit of something, my God, you'll be looking till the moon goes up that night trying to find it. Whatever it was, you're going to look and tear the house apart until you find it, if you bought it. It's no difference. If you want, they said, well, I want to help that single mother, person who never had a chance in life. I said, you want to help her? Help her get an education. Give her a job. You want to really help her? That's what you do. And you want to give that kid something to look up to and be proud of? Help that mom. Help that family. Be a family. Medicaid rules would say that if you live as a husband and wife, you don't get the same benefits for your children than if you live separate. That's crazy. Why do we tear families apart? Because of crazy federal laws. Doesn't make any sense at all. So we try to ask for waivers to put common sense back into it. I'll leave you with this. Someone once said, an optimist enrich the present, enhance the future, challenge the improbable, and attain the impossible. They enrich the present, enhance the future, challenge the improbable, and attain the impossible. I would like to think that everyone in this room is an optimist, because you wouldn't be here if you didn't think it could be better. If you didn't think you could make a difference, you wouldn't have spent time and take away from your schedule and your family to be here and to give something. All of you should walk out of here basically giving as much as you're taking away. If you're not, then you wasted your time. I thought it was an honor for me to be invited, but also to be sharing with you that there's people out there and there's people in government that work in the bureaucratic system that really care. They really care, and they're really good at what they do. We just got to let you do what you do best. Be creative. Let those juices flow. Don't be afraid to make a mistake if you're trying to improve something. And back you up when someone tries to attack you politically, because you might not, in their eyes, have made the right political decision. That's where we as governors and those of us in leadership can make the difference to let you do what you can. And that's what's expected out of Washington, I think. With that, I'd like to basically open it up to anybody that might have any questions. Yes, sir.
First of all, I'm a fan of waivers, so good luck with that. One of the 5 promises is around a safe home. Thanks. So one of the promises is a safe home. That's the business of public child welfare. And one of, I think, the challenges for public child welfare is to get on a governor's agenda. And that's a tough sell, because from a dollar perspective, it's pretty small. It's dwarfed by healthcare issues and other kinds of things. And really, there's a public liability, obviously. We get to governors' attentions when something bad happens, and when a headline gets made, or when somebody dies. And I'm wondering, as the incoming president at the NGA, do you have any insights on helping us help you figure out how to get a more constructive view of public child welfare onto governors' agendas?
The thing I'll be giving my State of the State address next week, and since I don't think many of you will be there, I can say a few things. We've hit on that. The biggest, you have to sensationalize it to understand how horrible this problem is, and what happens to our children and child welfare is basically the child porn that's going on around this country, every state. It is of epidemic proportion, child pornography, and what's happening to these children. That gets governors' attention, trust me. When they see something as horrific, when you go talk to your state policeman, we rotate our state policemen around because they can't take it. They cannot, coming as family people, cannot take what they're seeing. So we rotate them and cycle them in and out. They can't stay in that very long. We're going to take this on. We're going to go after this. And we're going to go after it with very, very aggressiveness and harsh penalties. That's something that brings it to light of what's happening in the home, how the home's broken down, when children are being, if you will, manipulated, if you will. It's just an awful trafficking that's going on. And it's out of sight. We don't know that much about it here, but it's really rapidly increasing in our states. And as I talk to other governors, they know, because they're talking. I says, talk to your law enforcement. Talk to your people on the front line and ask them. You've had 2- and 3-fold increases on child porn. And to me, that'll sensationalize it to basically we can revamp that whole child welfare and basically how we protect our children. There has to be intervention. That's some of our lowest paid workers come in our DHHRs on the front line. These are people with degrees. We're doing everything we can. I don't know why. I don't know why it's been an accepted trait for the people that we're asking to go out and put themselves on the front line every day, get some of the lowest pay and lowest compensation and less praise than any other sector of public service, and it should be absolutely the opposite. But to bring attention to it, it's going to be sensationalized. And to me, that's how I can bring it to the forefront in my state. And I will be doing that this coming. I think I can bring more light to it. Yes, sir.
Great comments this morning. I appreciate that. Could you comment on mental health? Any initiatives that you've taken there? Any thoughts on the area of mental health?
We have. That's, in our state, we probably transformed the same as most of you. We institutionalized a lot of people back for many, many years. And then in Sonia, the time frames, 80s is when we basically went to community-based, and we started, basically putting people in. We had group homes and assistance and this and that. And basically what happened is a lot of our prisons we've just did a whole prison. I had a blue ribbon committee. They've come back. A lot of the people that we have incarcerated or have mental illnesses. And it's basically a tremendous cost to us, but we're not doing anything to rehabilitate. So we have put an awful lot of money back. I put $12 million in our little budget last year, more than it's ever been put back for community base, and trying to get back and making sure we have the proper support systems in our communities to help with these people that need this assistance, to identify, to make sure that we follow up, to make sure that we give them the assistance that's needed. And it's just a horrific problem. In the Medicaid pie, that takes a very large proportion. If you look at the proportion of money that goes in that segment versus the rest, it takes quite a large. But if you look at society, what it does, the ripple effect, if we don't address it on the front end, it's just horrendous. So we're putting monies towards it. But right now, I can assure you, in strapped economies as we have them right now, it might be one that doesn't get the attention it needs. And I think the effects will be horrific for those states that don't meet those needs. The community-based centers that we have right now, and the group homes that we're doing, we think that are effective, but it's very costly, and we know that it's going to take a toll.
I really love your characterization of the retail government. And I think for a lot of us who are both advocates and work in the government, that rings very true. Figure out what the consumer wants. How would you articulate, as governor, what the expectations of the consumer are? And I think that's always a hard line for governors to walk, because they also vote you into office. But what do you tell the citizens of West Virginia that you expect from them? Well,
basically, I've been sometimes a little bit too brutally honest, but basically what I said, I'm not your provider. We have developed an entitlement mentality, and we all have. Right now, 50 governors, and we get together, very strong, all great leaders, and I can see so many of them now. The stimulus money, the American Recovery Resource Act, is about to run out. Right now, I'm budgeting for 2011, monies that I had. It stops as we know it. Everybody is rallying. How can we expand it? How can we keep this going? I said, it's got to stop. And how do you start? I said, this a crisis is a horrible thing to waste. You've probably got programs. You've probably got policies that need to be adjusted, that need to be eliminated. You've got a crisis right now as cover. You've got everybody hurting. My grandmother, Mama Kay, we call her, Mama Kay would say, honey, let me tell you, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Now, once they know you care, you're able to get through to them. You'll communicate. But if you come on that I know this, this, and this, and this, and they don't think it's coming from here, you're dead. And that's when I said, a West Virginian can shake your hand, look in your eyes, and see your soul. They want to know you care. They're having it tough. They know how tough it is. How do they expect government to have everything when they had a little better life and now they don't? They know that we're all tough, and they expect us all to hunker down. They don't expect you to live as government extravagant. The most privileged people today right now have a government paycheck. You got a government paycheck, you're pretty much guaranteed your retirement, you're pretty much guaranteed your insurance, and you take it for granted. And by God, if they try to reduce it, you're going to sue somebody. That's just the way Well, why are we so privileged? Why is government workers a privileged class? I can't understand that. The rest of society is not. Nobody else is protected. And they see that, and they see that attitude and that cavalier type of approach. Trust me, they're going to fight back and fight back hard. This 2010 is going to be, I think, a real 2010 election cycle is going to be very interesting, extremely interesting. People don't know where they're turning. They're not happy with anybody. They don't like you if you're Republican. They don't like you if you're Democrat. They don't like you if you're in politics. They don't like anything. They really don't. They don't have confidence in faith. They have lost confidence in faith that people are really there as public servants, really trying and willing to make the adjustments that they've got to make. They're sitting there figuring, okay, I'm not working like I was. I don't have the overtime I did. And you know what? We've lost one of our jobs in our family. How do we make these adjustments? And if they just see you, well, yeah, but if this group who always supported me, they wanted this extra road built or they wanted this extra program started, so I did that to appease them. If they get that, you follow me, they go berserk on that. And they should. So what we do is this: is tell your story before someone tells one on you. If you're making adjustments and changes, let them know. If you're trying to make it, try to get their support and ask them, say, I need your support. I'm going to ask the legislature to make some very difficult votes. They cannot, nor do I expect them to, without your support. They won't do it. But you've got to support it. And I know as long as my numbers stay high, I'm good. I can push them. When my numbers drop, they'll cannibalize me. And I know that too. That's the part of the game. I mean, I understand it completely. We all do. With that being said, you've got to keep pushing forward. But you've got to, government's got to change. Government's gotten too big. When my state built a new Capitol complex in 1932, early 40s, I had over 2.2 million people. I got 1.8 million people. Now you can't fit state government even in the city of Charleston, let alone in a campus. It's so big. What happened? My people went down. Services. Who's driving the services? Is it the providers driving the services? The citizens demanding it or providers driving it? That'd be a good one to think about. I think providers, because I tried Medicaid, adult diapers. I got, as a governor's level, can you imagine me talking about adult diapers? But let me tell you, I couldn't figure out. I started changing a little bit of what they were able to do and what they shouldn't do and this and that. And that Medicaid redesign I talked about. If you identified and you qualified to have diapers, whether you needed them or not, by God, you're going to get them. I talked to one guy, he said, Joe, I swear to God, they're the best thing to change oil with. They absorb so well. Now, the person that was providing the adult diapers, by God, they wanted to continue to send them. And I said, you people got to be nuts. You think that now that we know we're going to let that continue? So this is the crazy stuff that goes on in government. And you got to be crazy to be involved in it. Joan?
I want to make a comment. Obviously, I'm a West Virginian, and I'm a proud West Virginian today because this is my governor who's in front. But I can also say I was the state secretary when the governor was in the Senate. And he was on the Oversight Committee. And when he said earlier, he talked about, in effect, backing up people. He posed incredibly tough questions to me when I was in front of the committee. But he also backed me up. Mm-hmm. And I remember that. And I also remember it takes good leadership, great leadership, to do all of the things that the governor's talked about today. But at the time when I was at HHS, then the Medicaid panel was being put together. There weren't governors on there. And this governor, plus another governor, joined that panel. And I remember you and I chatted about it at the time you were going on it, and you got a lot of flack from our federal delegation.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of flack.
There was me and Jeb Bush was on it.
That was it. That was it. But you got a lot of flack from the West Virginia federal delegation. But I remember you and I chatting, and I said, you're going to learn the system, and you're going to figure out the waivers. And so a lot of what West Virginia now does, it is because they understood and they knew the process in order to get the waivers. So I'm a proud West Virginian today.
Thank you, Joe.
To have you here. And I have a chance to see this operational on the state level. I mean, I live in the community. I'm active in the community. My husband's active in the community. So we have a chance to see the ripple effect of this in the community level. And I think for those of you who are in foundations and corporations, et cetera, West Virginia is a great state to do experiments and other things in, because people they welcome it. And so I would, if you're not, I know we've talked here today and yesterday with people who are in corporations who are doing work with the governor and others, and I would encourage you, if you're not, you should take a look at it. I now work for a private foundation, and we hope to do some work in West Virginia also. Thank you.
Well, let me tell you one thing. Corrections are here. Corrections need to be made. Change is about, and change is all about making those corrections. There's no such thing as a comfort zone anymore, because there's not one of us that should be comfortable right now with the position this country is in, where we have been and where we could be. So I would say embrace it, and I think that's what you're here looking for, the change and correction. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Everything you said was just remarkable. Social services and healthcare are like the yin and yang. They're codependencies. How do you get government to take a step back and look at these more as a whole, because they really do affect what you do on the social service side, impacts healthcare delivery and vice versa?
Well, when I told you the crisis is a terrible thing to waste right now, the economic crisis that we're all in, and we're not being unscathed. We're being affected too, but we're still in good enough shape to pay our way through. We're making adjustments now that we can, and I've said this, we will not panic, but we will plan our way through. So what we're doing is we're asking all of them, I says, 2012, that's when the rubber hits the road. That's the real time. I'm backfilling with FMAP money right now. Most other states are backfilling through 2011. Some states hit the skids much quicker, and they've used most of their FMAP money, and they're really scrambling right now to try, and you're seeing some services cut, needed services, and you're getting throwing the baby out with the bathwater. See, I don't believe in across-the-board cuts. I've said if let's say that I've got to reduce my general revenue by 5% or $200 million, I said, I have a 10-year-old granddaughter that can figure out 5% of $4 billion is $200 million, and that's what you need to, and then everybody said 5%. I said, if I see one of my secretaries cut across the board, I'm going to look for a new secretary, because they're not a manager. I want people who can manage. Tell me something that's working. Give you a perfect example. My tax and revenue department, for every dollar I spend in outside audits in my state, auditing people that do business in my state, I get a $100 return. You think I'm going to cut back on auditors? If I see the tax and revenue secretary cut back on auditor, he's gone tonight. And they know that. I said, I want to come back and show me what you're going to cut. Show me what you think should be eliminated, and show me where you have to increase. And they said, well, and then they jumped me and said, you put a hiring freeze. I said, I didn't put a hiring freeze on. I put a hiring need on. Hiring need is this. You don't hire anybody in state government unless you can show. And it goes clear up to the secretary, and the secretary comes to me personally. We've got to hire this person or that person. There's got to be a need for that. I wiped out the unfilled vacancies. All they were doing is moving money back and forth and not filling the vacancies and using the money the vacancies would have paid for. I knew the game. I've been in the legislature too long, so I played the game. That was their biggest mistake, electing somebody that was upstairs. But I said, guys, we can't do that anymore. But what's happening right now, there's going to be the essential services that are given back to there's going to be that, it's going to redefine. We're going to redefine who we are as a state by state, what services and what resources we have to fulfill the services. And you're going to make a lot of change. You're going to make a lot of consolidation. Right now, everyone's got a silo. Are you in this? Well, where are you? Okay, I'm over here. Well, why are you two so far apart? You're doing the same thing, you know. And that's what these think tanks that you're in today, this couple of days, you got to figure out. How much redundancy do you have? How many silos have you set up in your state? Why are you doing so many difficult things and making it so complicated? And then governments, you know, like I said, they're running out of money. When you sooner or later, we're going to have people who don't want to buy our paper. If our paper doesn't have value to it, or our debt, if you will, we can't print the money if somebody doesn't back it up. So someone's going to say, well, wait a minute, I don't see a whole lot of value in America anymore. I think we've pretty much maxed out what we want to do there. The only thing that we have an advantage, and I've always said this, we have met every challenge that's ever been put forth, any generation has come before us, because of that entrepreneurial free spirit that we have. We figure we can figure anything out. And we're going to figure this one out. the bottom line is the corrections are going to be a little bit greater and deeper. I mentioned this. I don't know if, come on up, I know it's time to go. Dan's ready to jump. Come on, Dan. The thing I said, I don't know if this is accurate, these facts, but I heard this, and this was an alarming fact. The amount of energy demand that we have in this nation today, and my little state produces about 40% of the energy for the East Coast through coal-fired and through natural gas and all the things, and we have a big wind presence also people don't know about. They're telling me that the demand on the grid system on a per capita basis and GDP is lower than any time since the Great Depression. Now that tells you we're not making anything. That tells you we're not building things. We're not the high energy demands of the smeltering and the steel mills and the factories. It's not there. That's alarming. And the unemployment is still, we're having a hard time there. The economy is still going this direction. They've pumped in about $1 billion or more. We don't have banks releasing any money. I can't get capital for my small businesses. We've got to have a lot of corrections here. And it's going to get a little tougher. We don't see us, the final thing is that we're not going to come out of this. And every economist has told us as governors, 2013, 2014 maybe. Maybe. So I'm looking at, I do 5-year forecast on my budget. But what you see, I think the country will turn around by maybe late 2011, 2012. They think when you'll see an uptick of employment and opportunities. States lag about 2 years, year and a half to 2 years behind that because of all the services that are demanded. But we're going to have to make some real painful adjustments. With that, let me say thank you so much for allowing me to do this.